There's a particular kind of silence that follows a scream, a silence thick with shock, disbelief, and the slow unraveling of life as you knew it. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. The Patterson home sat at the end of a quiet street in Elmswood, a predominantly black neighborhood tucked just outside of Jackson, Mississippi. It wasn't rich, but it was proud. The kind of place where screen doors stayed open in summer and neighbors shouted greetings across porches. On that night, June 18, 2024, the air was heavy with heat and a brewing storm. But no one knew the real storm was already pounding inside the Patterson house. Lena Patterson, 17, paced the front hallway, her phone trembling in her hand. Her voice cracked as she spoke into the receiver. 911, please hurry. My mom's boyfriend, he's drunk again. He just pushed her. Please. In the background, glass shattered. A younger voice could be heard sobbing. Lena turned, her eyes locking onto her little brother, Elijah, just 11 years old, curled on the couch, clutching a Spider-Man blanket he hadn't let go of since he was 6. His wide brown eyes were brimming with fear, and his lip quivered like he was trying not to cry, trying to be strong for his sister. But Lena knew better. Elijah was soft-hearted, a quiet, curious kid who loved sketching superheroes and staying out of trouble. He didn't belong in this. Nobody did. "Ma's bleeding," he whispered. "I know, baby. I called them. They're on the way. It's gonna be okay." But she didn't know that was a lie. 5 minutes later, the blue and red flash of police lights cut through the dark like electric veins. Lena's heart lifted, for a moment. For a single, sacred second, she believed they were safe. She rushed to the door, yelling over her shoulder for Elijah to stay put and for her mom to hold on. When she opened it, the first officer shouted, gun drawn. "Hands where I can see them." She froze, hands up. "I'm the one who called, please. He's inside hurting her." "Back away from the door." Another officer barked, storming up the porch with weapon raised. Everything moved too fast after that. Footsteps thundered inside. A scream. Then a shot. Just one. Time stopped. Then came the mother's cry, raw, guttural. "No. That's my baby. You shot my baby." Lena pushed past them. The hallway blurred as she ran. Her world narrowed to the spot on the carpet where Elijah now lay, a crimson stain blooming beneath him. His hands still gripped the blanket. His eyes looked up at her, not angry, not afraid, just confused. "But, we called for help," he whispered. And then he stopped speaking. What happens when the people meant to protect you become the ones you fear? This isn't just a story, it's the truth too many families know. For Lena, her mother, and Elijah, nothing could undo that night. What they never expected was what came next. Because someone had been filming. A neighbor's doorbell camera caught it all. And once that footage went public, everything changed. This is just the beginning. Grab your popcorn and sit still because this is going to be an emotional ride. One broken family, a system exposed. Sometimes the ones who scream for help never get it. Kindly subscribe and watch the full story unfold. Now let's go back to where it all began. Elijah Patterson's school shoes still sat neatly by the front door, small, scuffed from daily wear, the laces slightly frayed at the ends. His sketchbook was left open on the kitchen table, halfway through a pencil drawing of a superhero that looked suspiciously like himself, cape fluttering, one hand stretched toward the sky. That morning had started like any other. Elijah was singing under his breath while brushing his teeth, and Lena was threatening to unplug the Wi-Fi if he didn't stop leaving crumbs on the couch. Their mother, Renee, had looked tired but smiled when she dropped a kiss on each of their heads. But that night, everything had shattered. Lena sat in the hospital waiting room now, knees bouncing, her hands raw from how hard she had scrubbed Elijah's blood from her arms. Her eyes refused to blink. Her ears kept ringing with one sentence, "He's stable, but he's not out of danger." Her mother sat hunched beside her, blood-soaked blouse now hidden beneath a hospital-issued hoodie. Her lip was busted, and her right eye already purpling. But it wasn't the bruises that aged her 10 years overnight. It was the silence. Renee hadn't spoken a word since the gunshot. Lena clenched her fists. "They were supposed to protect us." Across town, Officer Darren Mace sat stiffly in the precinct conference room, staring down the barrel of a brewing scandal. His hands were still trembling. His partner, Officer Keller, paced near the window, muttering about mistaken movements and high-stress response. She was screaming. He ran around the corner. "I thought he had a weapon," Mace whispered. "You thought an 11-year-old boy had a weapon?" "I didn't know he was a kid." Keller didn't answer. Neither did the watch commander, who stood with his arms crossed, frowning at the paperwork he'd soon have to bury or escalate. Body cam footage was being reviewed. News was already spreading. Someone at the hospital had leaked the child's condition. Worse, someone on the scene said a neighbor might have video. "If this hits the internet before we have a statement, we're F*******D, Keller muttered. The commander turned to Mace. "You better pray that camera didn't catch what I think it did." Back at Elmswood, the street had transformed into something unrecognizable. News vans lined the sidewalks. Protesters clutched signs, "Justice for Elijah," and "Don't shoot the helpers," written in bold marker. Neighbors cried, others screamed into bullhorns. Police stood in rigid formation, trying not to look shaken. But inside the Patterson house, time moved differently. Lena and her mother returned briefly to grab clothes. The bloodstain in the hallway was gone, scrubbed by someone else. But the air still felt haunted. Every room echoed with the sound of Elijah's voice, his quiet giggle, the way he always asked, "What if?" Lena paused at the kitchen table, her hand landing on his sketchbook. There, in graphite lines, was the last thing he'd drawn. A hero standing tall in front of a burning building, arms outstretched to shield a family. Above it, written in a child's shaky script, "Even little guys can protect." Her throat tightened. Elijah had believed in heroes. In justice. In calling for help. And look what it got him. Later that night, while reporters argued over whether the footage was real and the mayor issued a vague promise of transparency, something shifted. A woman named Mrs. Caldwell, a retired schoolteacher who lived 2 houses down, uploaded her doorbell camera footage to social media. She didn't call the police. She didn't ask permission. She uploaded it straight to the world. In the grainy night vision, you could see everything. Lena opening the door with her hands up. Officers pushing past her. Elijah stepping into the hallway clutching his blanket. And then, Officer Mace raising his gun. The footage froze right before the shot. But it was enough. The internet exploded. By morning, #Elijah Patterson was trending across the nation. Celebrities tweeted support. Activists demanded charges. A civil rights attorney called Lena and offered to represent the family, for free. But as the world raged, the Patterson home stayed quiet. Elijah was still in surgery. Renee stared at the news coverage, unmoving. Her eyes followed the crawl across the screen, unarmed child shot after calling 911. Like it was someone else's story. Lena finally broke the silence. They need to know he's not just a headline. He's Elijah. He likes mango popsicles. He's afraid of bees. He wants to be an artist. Renee didn't answer, but her hand reached for Lena's. And for the first time since the shot, she whispered something back. "Then let's show them." The waiting room lights buzzed overhead, sterile and bright, as if they hadn't noticed the grief growing in its corners. Nurses walked past with clipboards. Monitors beeped softly from behind doors. But to Lena Patterson, everything felt like a distant hum, muted, hollow. The kind of silence that only comes after trauma, where the world continues on autopilot and you're stuck in pause. Elijah was alive. Still unconscious. But alive. The doctors said he had made it through the night. The bullet had pierced his side, narrowly missing his lung. 1 inch to the left, and they'd be planning a funeral. 1 inch. Lena stared at her reflection in the vending machine's glass. Her hair was frizzy, her hoodie wrinkled, her eyes bloodshot. She didn't recognize herself. Not fully. Because the version of her that had existed before the shot, the sister who teased Elijah about cereal choices, who stayed up late scrolling TikTok while he sketched, was gone. She'd died on the floor beside him. And what remained was someone new. Across town, the footage had ignited a war. The local police department had gone into damage control. The chief issued a statement calling the incident regrettable and under investigation. Officer Darren Mace had been placed on administrative leave pending review. But no arrest. No charges. And now they had a bigger problem. National attention. Major news outlets had picked up the story. Civil rights organizations were organizing marches. And worst of all, for them, someone from within the department had leaked the original dispatch call. The full recording. It was devastating. 911, please hurry. My mom's boyfriend is hurting her. Then came the sound of Elijah in the background whispering, will they come fast? The dispatcher's calm response. The timestamp. The proof that the family had called for help, not posed any threat. The internet turned from outrage to fury. In the hospital's press area, dozens of cameras pointed toward a small podium. Renee Patterson stood behind it, flanked by their newly retained attorney, Mr. Langston, and Lena by her side. She wore the same hospital hoodie. Her voice trembled slightly, but her gaze never left the cameras. My son is not a threat. He's not a thug. He's a boy. He just turned 11 last month. And now he's fighting for his life because we believed calling the police meant safety. Reporters shouted questions. Have the officers apologized? Do you plan to sue the city? Mrs. Patterson, what do you want the public to know? Renee swallowed. She looked down for a long moment, then back up. I want them to know we're not backing down. Langston stepped forward, crisp in his gray suit, voice smooth and cutting. We are filing a civil lawsuit. We are demanding an independent investigation. And we will not rest until accountability has a name and consequences. The room erupted with questions. But Lena didn't hear any of them. Her eyes caught movement at the back of the crowd. A man in uniform. Not police. Military. He wasn't recording. He wasn't clapping. He was just watching. And then he turned and walked away. That night the threat started. Anonymous messages. A phone call that said nothing but heavy breathing. One email with no text, just an attachment, an edited image of Lena's school photo with crosshairs drawn over her face. Langston's team jumped into action. This is retaliation, he said, jaw tight. They're trying to intimidate you into silence. Renee locked the front door 3 times that night. Lena moved Elijah's sketchbook from the kitchen table to the inside of her backpack. She didn't say why. Meanwhile, across every social platform, the story surged. TikTokers posted emotional videos in support. One girl stitched footage of Elijah's artwork and sobbed, "He reminds me of my little brother." Twitter was ablaze with hashtags like #JusticeForElijah and #CalledNotCriminals. Even high school students from the nearby district walked out in protest, holding handmade signs. But not everyone was on their side. A far-right blogger released a counter-narrative, accusing Renee of fabricating the abuse claim to stage a police confrontation for attention. The article showed grainy photos of her from years ago, one at a protest, another at a loud party. Is the Patterson family exploiting their son's shooting for fame? The headline stung like a slap. Lena saw it during a late-night scroll and nearly threw her phone. "I want to burn this whole town down," she whispered. Renee didn't look up. She just muttered, "That's what they want." But then, something unexpected happened. A young boy's video went viral. It was shot from his bedroom. His face was full of braces and emotion. "My name is Jameer. I'm 10. And I got scared when I saw what happened to Elijah. Because I look like him. I talk like him. I even draw superheroes too. And I want to ask, if I call 911 one day, will they shoot me too?" His video hit 8 million views in 24 hours. Celebrities began reposting it. And just like that, Elijah's story wasn't just a headline. It became a movement. Back at the hospital, Elijah stirred. He didn't wake fully. But his eyes fluttered. His fingers twitched. And when Lena squeezed his hand, he squeezed back. She cried so hard the nurse had to sit her down. "He's fighting," she whispered. "He's still fighting." That same night, Langston received an encrypted file in his inbox from an anonymous source. The email read, "You don't know the full story. Start here." He clicked it open. What he saw made him sit straight in his chair. It was not body cam footage. It was something else. Security cam footage from inside the precinct. A conversation. Officer Mace, Officer Keller, and the watch commander. We don't need this blowing up. Say he reached for something. Say you feared for your life. Langston hit play again. And again. Because if this footage was real, then it wasn't just a tragedy. It was a cover-up. The clip was only 37 seconds long. No flashy edits. No background music. No voiceover. Just cold, grainy security footage from inside a police precinct, dated less than 2 hours after Elijah Patterson was shot. In the dim light of the break room, Officer Darren Mace leaned against the wall, his face pale and wet with sweat. Officer Keller stood in the corner, arms folded, his jaw clenched. And their commander, a man with decades of decorated service and a chest full of ribbons, paced in front of them. You say you feared for your life, the commander said calmly. He was a shadow, moved too fast, you thought he had a weapon. But he didn't, Mace muttered, eyes down. He doesn't need to have one if you felt threatened. That's how the statute reads. We protect the department first, you hear me? The screen cut to black. No names were mentioned, but the timestamp matched the night Elijah was shot. And the voices, Lena recognized them instantly. Langston called an emergency meeting. This, he said, pausing the footage, is no longer just about negligence. It's conspiracy. It's cover-up. They met in a hotel room across from the hospital. Renee sat on the edge of the bed, clasping a mug of untouched coffee. Lena stood near the window, her arms crossed, watching traffic blur through her reflection. Langston's voice was low but firm. We have two options. We hand this over quietly, to the media, to the feds, and pray the right people run with it. Or, we go public ourselves. Lena turned. You mean, post it? I mean live stream it. Hold a press conference. Make sure no one can bury it. Renee finally spoke, her voice brittle. And what happens to us when we do? Langston hesitated. There will be backlash. Personal. Racial. Institutional. You'll be painted as liars, agitators, opportunists. They'll dig up everything they can. Lena stepped forward. Her voice didn't shake. Then let them see everything. The press conference was set for Friday morning, held outside the Elmswood Public Library, one of the few places the city hadn't yet tried to shut them down. The night before, Lena couldn't sleep. She sat beside Elijah's hospital bed, sketchbook in hand. Her brother still hadn't fully awakened, but his breathing was steady. Machines hummed beside him like lullabies. She turned to a blank page and began to draw. Not a superhero this time, but a boy sitting on a porch, looking up at the sky, waiting for sirens that never brought safety. A boy with wide eyes and a blanket in his arms. Elijah. By morning, the crowd was enormous. Reporters. Protesters. Local activists. College students. Ministers. Even a few police officers off duty, standing silently in the back. Langston took the mic first. Behind him, a massive screen was rigged to a laptop. He cleared his throat. Today, the Patterson family shares not just their pain, but proof. The crowd hushed. He clicked play. The footage rolled, raw, unedited. Every word captured. Every lie exposed. By the time it ended, the silence was no longer out of respect. It was rage simmering beneath a boil. Renee stepped forward. You've heard their voices. You've seen their plan. And now you understand why my baby's blood is on their hands. Someone in the crowd shouted, charge them now. Another yelled, we see you, Elijah. Tears streamed down Lena's face as she watched strangers chant her brother's name. Not as a victim. As a symbol. That night, the video hit 22 million views. National anchors debated it live on air. Influencers stitched reactions with captions like, I'm sick of this. Lawmakers tweeted support. But the city's response? Silence. No arrests. No charges. No apology. Until the death threats returned. The first came in the form of a letter slipped under the hotel door. It wasn't handwritten. It was typed, cold and surgical. And the circus. or the next shot won't miss. Langston filed a police report. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. But that wasn't the worst of it. The next morning, their hotel room door was found scratched, 3 long claw marks, deliberate and deep. And Lena's backpack had been tampered with. Inside, where Elijah's sketchbook had been, was a crumpled photo of the family with red XS marked over their faces. That was the moment they knew this wasn't just about silencing a lawsuit. It was about erasing them. Langston relocated them that afternoon. Underground. From a safe house on the edge of the city, Lena live-streamed a new video. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. No filter. My name is Lena Patterson. I'm 17. My little brother was shot by the people I called to save him. And now, the people who tried to cover it up are trying to scare us into silence. She held up the claw-marked photo. But we're not afraid anymore. Her voice wavered. Not with weakness, but with rising fire. Elijah still isn't awake. But if he could speak, I think he'd say, draw the truth. Show it to the world. So that's what we're doing. We're not stopping. We're just getting started. The live stream reached 2.1 million views in under 12 hours. And it reached someone unexpected. Across the country, in a Washington, D.C. office building, a woman named Cora Manning sat forward in her chair. Civil Rights Division. U.S. Department of Justice. She rewound the video. Twice. Then picked up the phone. Yeah. It's Manning. We need to open a federal case file. Patterson. Elijah. You've seen the footage. The pause. Well, you're about to. Get ready. The knock came at 4:42 a.m. It wasn't aggressive, but firm. Intentional. The kind of knock that said, we know you're in there. Langston was already awake. He hadn't slept much since the video went live. Wearing sweats and a stiff expression, he opened the door slowly, one hand behind his back on the handle of a baseball bat he'd taken to sleeping beside. 2 men stood on the porch. Not police. Not press but FBI. They flashed credentials. Special Agent Jarrell Hayes. This is Special Agent Eun Kim. We need to speak with the Patterson family. Urgently. Langston narrowed his eyes. On what authority? Agent Hayes didn't flinch. Federal. A DOJ inquiry has been opened. Civil Rights Division. And sir, if you're holding them back, it's going to look very bad, very fast. Langston stepped aside. Inside, Lena sat up from the couch. Her mother came down the hall with her robe wrapped tight and a face that said, no more surprises. Please, God, no more. But this one might finally be the kind of surprise they needed. By 10 a.m., the DOJ announcement was public. A full-scale civil rights investigation had been launched into the Elmswood Police Department, triggered by evidence presented by the Patterson family and their legal team. This wasn't just about Officer Mace anymore. This was about the system. The department's use of force records. Their patterns of targeting Black and Latino neighborhoods. The repeated complaints that had mysteriously vanished. The body cams that went missing. The internal memos buried after every shooting. For the first time in decades, someone was digging them up. And Elmswood PD panicked. At the precinct, Commander Wilkes slammed his fist against the desk. They brought in the feds? Keller stood stiff, silent. Mace looked sick. Sweating again. I didn't ask for this, he whispered. I didn't mean to shoot. Wilkes cut him off. Intent doesn't matter. Perception does. And now the whole damn country thinks we're executioners. He turned to Keller. Delete every copy of that security footage. Now. Keller shook his head. It's too late. It's everywhere. And that girl, she's got them behind her. She's not just a victim anymore. She's a symbol. Wilkes's face hardened. Then we bury the symbol. Meanwhile, Lena sat at Elijah's bedside as he stirred again. Not just a twitch this time. His eyes opened, slowly. Confused. Mom, he rasped. Lena bolted to the door. He's awake. He's awake. Renee rushed in seconds later. She dropped to her knees beside him, tears spilling freely. Baby, oh my baby. Elijah blinked, trying to speak. But his voice cracked. Lena leaned in. It's okay. Don't talk yet. Just you're safe. You're safe now. He gave the faintest nod. The first real hope they'd had in days. Across the hospital courtyard, cameras rolled as protesters gathered again. But this time, it wasn't just locals. Students had arrived from as far as Atlanta and Chicago. Ministers, veterans, journalists. Someone had even projected Elijah's drawing, a child looking to the sky, onto the side of the hospital building with a projector. Beneath it, a new chant rang out. He called for help, we heard him. The hospital CO tried to shut it down. Security was called. But the crowd only grew. That night, Langston sat Lena down. Listen, he said gently, you've become something bigger than this case. Bigger than the family. You're a national voice now. She looked at him, unsure. I never asked to be. I know, he said. But history doesn't wait for people to be ready. At City Hall, a different conversation was happening. The mayor was pacing. How the hell did this get so big? We've had shootings before. We've had protests before. What's different this time? Her advisor shifted awkwardly. She's compelling, Lena. And the footage, there's no room for ambiguity. Even conservatives are saying it looks bad. The mayor sat. And now the DOJ's digging. They'll find everything. The payout we gave in 2017. The settlement in 19. That report we buried on racial profiling. She trailed off. Then looked up. Fix it. Fix it how? The mayor leaned in. Make it go away. The next morning, Renee received a visit at the hospital. A well-dressed man in a gray suit introduced himself as James Claremont, representing a coalition of civic leaders and donors. He smiled. Too much. We want to help your family heal, he said. Privately. Peacefully. We're prepared to offer a substantial settlement. Enough to move you out of state. Start fresh. Never have to worry about safety again. Lena stepped in from the hallway. No cameras. No press. Just a wire transfer and a gag order, right? Turned. You must be Lena. Impressive young woman. Bright future. Which is why I'd hate to see it disrupted. The internet moves on. But bad attention can linger. College applications, employers, they Google everything. Renee stood. You can take your money, she said, voice shaking, and walk it right back out of this hospital. Claremont's smile didn't budge. But his eyes darkened. I hope you reconsider. That night, Lena recorded another video. No fancy lighting. Just a lamp and her words. They offered us hush money today. Thought we'd sell our pain for peace and leave without a fight. But my brother's life isn't a bargaining chip. She held up Elijah's sketchbook. He's awake now. And when he saw his drawing projected on the hospital wall, he smiled. First smile in weeks. So no, we're not going anywhere. Not until every lie is exposed. Not until the people who tried to bury him are held accountable. She paused. And if you're one of the ones watching this, hoping I'll get tired or scared or quiet, keep hoping. In the shadows of a government office, someone else was watching too. Agent Eun Kim leaned back in her chair. We've just uncovered financial irregularities tied to the Elmswood PD's misconduct cases. Funds rerouted, lawsuits settled off-book, gag orders filed under shell names. Hayes frowned. Think the mayor's involved? Kim didn't look up. She's at the center of it. Hayes let out a breath. Then we're going to need more than subpoenas. The morning of the indictment, Elijah asked a question. It was the first full sentence he'd spoken since the shooting. He sat up slowly in bed, wrapped in his mother's hoodie, watching the sunlight stretch across the hospital floor. Am I gonna have to move schools? He whispered. Lena, seated beside him, blinked back tears. Not from sadness, but from the quiet force behind his voice. The question was innocent. But beneath it was the truth every black child learns too early. If you survive injustice, do you still get to live a normal life? Lena took his hand. No, baby. You're not going anywhere. By that afternoon, the courthouse was flooded. The Justice Department had moved quickly. The findings were overwhelming. The attempted cover-up, the tampered evidence, the illegal settlements, and most damning, The confirmation that both Officer Mace and Commander Wilkes knew Elijah was a child before the shot was fired. The video of Mace's post-shooting confession, quietly captured by internal security, had sealed it. Now, the indictment included charges of deprivation of rights under color of law, obstruction of justice, conspiracy to falsify public records, attempted manslaughter, and for the first time in Elmwood's history, the mayor herself was named in a federal case. Outside the courthouse, a podium stood on the steps. This time, it wasn't the press or the lawyers speaking. It was Lena. She wore a plain black dress. No makeup. Elijah's sketchbook tucked under her arm. Her voice, when it came, was quiet, but thunderous. My brother was 11. Unarmed. Afraid. And he did what every child in danger is taught to do. He called for help. She paused. And the people who came saw his skin before they saw his fear. They saw a threat before they saw a boy. Cameras clicked. Reporters leaned in. Lena opened the sketchbook. This is what he drew the day after he woke up. It's not a superhero this time. She turned the book around. On the page was a drawing of a courtroom. A judge. A girl holding her brother's hand. And above them all, on the walls, were the words, "Justice doesn't whisper. It roars." The crowd broke into applause. Elijah's trial wasn't televised, but the transcripts went viral. Every line of cross-examination. Every contradiction in the officers' testimonies. The damning text messages between commanders. The payout offers from city officials. And in the final moments of the trial, Officer Mace broke down. "I didn't mean to shoot him," he sobbed. "I was scared. I saw a flash. I thought he was someone else. I don't even know who I saw, but it wasn't him." The courtroom was silent. Then the judge leaned forward. "And why did you assume he was someone else, Officer Mace?" Mace didn't answer. He didn't have to. The jury deliberated for just under 4 hours. The verdict? Guilty. On all counts. The sentence, 22 years without parole. Commander Wilkes received 18. Keller, who cooperated, got 5 and a permanent ban from any law enforcement role. The mayor was impeached and charged with federal obstruction. But what mattered most was not the punishment. It was the acknowledgement. For once, the system said, this was wrong. For once, a black child's life had value in the eyes of the law. 3 weeks later, Elijah went home. He still had physical therapy ahead. And some nights, he woke up crying from dreams that echoed with sirens. But he was walking again. Laughing. Drawing. And talking. One morning, Renee found him on the porch, sketching something new. She leaned over and smiled. "What's that one?" He held it up proudly. It was a picture of Lena, standing in front of a crowd, holding a microphone, with fire in her eyes and the word, hope, behind her like a sunrise. "That's you," he said softly. Lena saw it later. And she didn't say anything. She just hugged him longer than she ever had before. In the months that followed, a foundation was created in Elijah's name. The Elijah Patterson Initiative for Justice. Run by survivors. Funded by activists. Focused on education, awareness, and policy reform around 911 response protocols. Elijah himself spoke, shyly, at the launch. "I still believe in calling for help," he said into the mic, his voice soft but steady. "I just think we have to change what help looks like." The crowd erupted. The final chapter of this story wasn't televised. It happened in a quiet neighborhood. At a small town school, where a teacher asked her 5th grade class to name a hero from their lifetime. One girl raised her hand and said, "Elijah Patterson." The class fell silent. And then, one by one, the students began to draw. Not superheroes, not presidents, but a little boy who called for help and changed everything. If you watched this and felt something, share it. Not because it's viral, but because it's true. Stories like Elijah's happen far too often, and they rarely end with justice. But this one did. Because people stood up. Because a sister didn't stay silent. Because a family believed the truth mattered. Subscribe to Life Stories by Ria for more powerful, true-to-life stories that uncover the darkness and shine a light through it. Like, comment, and share this with someone who still believes in justice. Tell us in the comments, what does justice look like to you?